Welcome back to the deep dive. It is early 2026, and I want you to picture something for a second.
Okay.
If you stand in downtown Ottawa, looking up at the Peace Tower, everything looks pretty much the same as it did 5, 10, even 20 years ago.
Sure. Stable. Quiet.
It's quiet, it's bureaucratic, it's stable. But if you were to hop on a plane and fly out to Garrison, Edmonton, or look at the satellite imagery of the training grounds in Wainwright, or, and this is the key part, dig into the balance sheets at National Defense Headquarters,
Then the picture changes
No.
dramatically.
you would see something completely different. We are standing on the edge of a cliff.
And not necessarily in a bad way, though it is. I mean, the scale of it is terrifying. We are witnessing a pivot point. Historians are going to be writing about this moment, this specific window from 2024 to 2026 for the next 50 years.
Absolutely. We aren't just talking about a budget update or a new recruitment ad. We are talking about the most radical transformation of Canada's land forces since the end of the Cold War.
Maybe even since Korea. Seriously. The scope is that big.
And to get our heads around this, we have pulled together a massive stack of sources. We're looking at the landmark 2024 policy, Our North, Strong and Free, the 2025 Canada Strong budget that finally put real money on the table,
Which is a huge part of the story.
and a crucial, fascinating internal strategy document called Inflection Point 2025, released by Lieutenant General Michael Wright.
Plus, we have the technical specs on some very, very heavy hardware that is about to change the game. But before we get to the tanks and the tech, we have to understand the headline.
Okay.
If we had to summarize this entire shift in one phrase, it would be the death of contribution warfare.
Okay, let's unpack that immediately. Contribution warfare. It sounds like a buzzword, but reading through these documents, it feels more like an entire philosophy that we are abandoning. What exactly does that mean?
It was a survival mechanism. For 30 years, really since the 1990s, the Canadian Army operated on a specific model, and that model was Canada provides a piece of the puzzle. We never fought alone. We sent a niche unit to a UN mission or a specialized battle group to a NATO coalition. We were the plug-in force.
Like a very expensive, very well-trained Lego brick, you send it off, and it fits into someone else's model.
Exactly. That's a perfect analogy. We provided a high-quality brick, a very capable brick, but we relied on the Americans or the British to build the castle.
Oh.
We relied on them for the heavy lifting, the massive logistics chains, the high-level command structures, the long-range air defense. We were contributors. We didn't own the battle space. We rented a room in it.
And now, what's changed?
Now the landlord is busy, and the neighborhood has gotten dangerous. The goal now is national agency.
Hard power.
Hard power. The sources are very, very clear on this. The geopolitical reality of 2026, with Russia and China asserting themselves aggressively in the Arctic, mapping the seabed, probing our defenses, it means Canada can no longer outsource its security.
We can't just call for help and assume it's coming.
Not in time. We need to be able to fight and win on our own territory, specifically in the north. And to do that, you can't just be a contributor. You have to own the house.
Which brings us to the sheer scale of this shift. I mean, you mentioned it's not just a budget update. We are talking billions in spending, entirely new command structures, and my personal favorite part of this deep dive, heavy metal.
Oh, yeah.
We are talking tanks, tracked fighting vehicles, and enough firepower to make a serious statement.
It is the return of the division, and that's a word we haven't used seriously in the Canadian Army context since 1992.
1992.
Yeah, Lieutenant General Wright's Inflection Point 2025 makes it crystal clear. To play in the big leagues, to actually deter a peer adversary like Russia in the Arctic, you cannot fight as a brigade. You have to fight as a division.
So today we are going to break this down into a roadmap. We're going to look at these 3 new Army divisions and what they actually do, because they are very different animals.
Very different.
We're going to talk about the massive centralization of Canada's tank fleet in Edmonton, which is a huge logistical gamble that has a lot of people nervous.
It really does.
We're going to look at the hunt for 250 new tracked fighting vehicles, the so-called Med-Cav-E, and we'll dig into the machinery trying to make it all happen, specifically this new Defense Investment Agency.
And we have to talk about the risks. Because while the ambition is high, the friction is real.
Oh, absolutely. But let's start with the structure. From brigades to divisions. To the average listener, that might just sound like military jargon. Why does the structure need to change? Why can't we just keep doing what we've been doing with the brigades we have?
It comes back to that concept of sovereignty and self-reliance. I mean, think about it this way. Under the old model, if there was a major threat to Canadian soil.
A real serious invasion or incursion.
Right. We would effectively be waiting for allies to bring the high-value warfighting capabilities.
What do you mean by high value?
I'm talking about things like long-range artillery that can hit a target 80 kilometers away, or massive air defense umbrellas to shoot down cruise missiles. The really big-ticket strategic stuff. A brigade doesn't usually have that stuff organic to it.
It's too small.
It's too small. A division does. A division is a self-contained fighting ecosystem.
So a brigade is like a regional sports team, very good at what it does, but a division is the major league franchise with stadium and the TV deal and its own farm system.
That's a fair analogy. A brigade is agile. It's about 3,000 to 5,000 soldiers. But it lacks depth. It lacks resilience.
What do you mean by that?
If you get into a high-intensity fight, like what we see in Ukraine, a brigade burns out. It runs out of ammo, it runs out of fuel, it runs out of people very, very quickly. It's designed for a short, sharp engagement.
Okay.
A division, which is 10,000 to 15,000 soldiers, plus all the support elements, has the mass to stay in the fight. It can absorb losses. It can sustain itself for weeks, not days.
And the policy, Our North, Strong and Free, explicitly points to this gap.
It does. It identifies a critical vulnerability. If the threat is in the Canadian Arctic, we might be on our own for the opening phases of a conflict, the critical first 72 hours.
And you can't wait for help to arrive.
You can't. By then, it's too late. We need the ability to detect, deter, and defeat threats, specifically in Canadian territory, without waiting for a permission slip or a support package from NATO. We need to handle our own business.
So enter the 3 new divisions. Let's walk through them because, as you said, they aren't carbon copies of each other. First up, we have the Defense of Canada Division.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty self-explanatory, but what does it look like?
So I like to think of this one as the shield.
The shield, okay.
This is a reserve-heavy formation. Its primary focus is here, at home. It's designed to be the boots on the ground for domestic operations.
Like disaster relief.
Exactly. Think about Operation Lentis disaster response. Floods, fires, that has become a huge part of the Army's job in the last decade due to climate change. This division formalizes that role. But it's also about sovereignty patrols, asserting our presence.
And this is where the Canadian Rangers come in, right? The famous red hoodies.
Correct. The Rangers are those incredible reservists who operate in the most remote northern communities. They are the eyes and ears of the military in the north. They know the land better than anyone.
And they were kind of scattered before. Organizationally.
They were. Previously, they were chopped up under different regional commands. If you were a ranger in Nunavut, you reported to a different headquarters than a ranger in Quebec.
Which seems inefficient.
It was. Now, this new structure consolidates all 5 Canadian Ranger Patrol groups under one single formation within the Defense of Canada Division.
That seems like a really smart move for coordination. If you're running an operation across the north, you want one person to call.
It's vital. It gives them a unified voice and a unified operational concept. Instead of being an afterthought in 5 different regions, they are now the tip of the spear for this entire division's northern strategy.
But the division isn't just about patrols and floods, is it? It has a bigger wartime role.
Oh, absolutely. It's also the basis for mobilization.
What does that mean, mobilization?
If a major crisis hits World War III type stuff, this division is the engine that generates the mass of troops. It takes in civilians, trains them, equips them, and forms them into units to reinforce the front lines. It's the framework for a national war effort.
And I see it's also integrating with the Air Force.
Yes, very closely. It's integrating with the RCAF for air and missile defense planning.
Right, because if we're defending Canada, the threat is likely coming from the air or space over the Arctic. A missile, a bomber.
Exactly. The first contact will be on a radar screen. So this division acts as the ground component for that air defense shield. It provides the security for the radar sites, the missile batteries, the command posts. It links the ground picture with the air picture.
Okay, so if that's the shield, the second division must be the sword, the maneuver division.
The heavy hitter, no question. This is where the regular force brigades, 1 brigade out west, 2 brigade in Ontario, and 5 brigade in Quebec now live.
But it's more than just putting them under a new boss, right?
Much more. They aren't just independent brigades anymore. They are being fused into a divisional fighting force. This is the entity designed to go toe-to-toe with a peer enemy and win. This is Canada's mailed fist.
And the sources mention some new toys for this division, specifically a fires brigade. That sounds significant.
This is a huge shift. In the contribution warfare days, Canada didn't really do deep strike. We didn't have the really long-range guns. We relied on the U.S. Army or the Royal Artillery for that.
We were the infantry, they were the artillery.
In many cases, yes. Now, we are standing up a designated Fires Brigade. This is where you get your long-range precision strike, things like the HIMARS systems, high-mobility artillery rocket systems, that have been so incredibly effective in Ukraine.
So we're talking about the ability to strike targets well behind enemy lines. Command posts, supply dumps.
Precisely. We're talking 80, 90 kilometers, maybe even further with future munitions. It changes the calculus for an enemy commander. They can't just sit 40 kilometers back and feel safe anymore. Their headquarters is at risk. Their logistics are at risk.
And it's not just rockets. There are other new pieces here.
Right. Along with that, they are adding a dedicated drone unit at the divisional level. So not just little drones for the squads, but larger, more capable ones for reconnaissance and targeting. And a sustainment brigade.
A whole brigade just for logistics.
You need it. A division consumes an unbelievable amount of fuel, food, and ammunition. You need a dedicated formation just to keep this beast fed and fighting.
I noticed the Global Response Task Force mentioned here, too. Where does that fit in? Is that part of this heavy division?
It's grouped under it for command, but it's a very different tool. Think of it this way. Heavy armor takes time to move. You have to put tanks on trains, then on ships. It can take weeks to deploy the maneuver division overseas.
Right, it's not nimble.
Not at all. The Global Response Task Force is the opposite. It's a light infantry regiment grouped under one command designed to be wheels up in 48 hours.
The 901 Force.
That's it. If something pops off in the Arctic, or frankly anywhere in the world where Canada has interests, these are the first ones out the door to secure an airfield, evacuate citizens, or stabilize a situation while the heavy armor gears up.
Okay, that makes sense. A quick reaction force. And then the third one, the support division. This sounds like the unsexy sibling.
The unsung hero, really. This division consolidates all the base support, institutional support, supply chains, and garrisons. The philosophy here is cognitive unloading.
Cognitive unloading. Explain that.
In the past, a brigade commander had to worry about training for war, but he also had to worry about the plumbing in the barracks, the contract for the cafeteria, and the supply of winter boots for his soldiers.
All the administrative headaches.
Headaches that distract from the main mission. The goal here is to let the maneuver division commander focus entirely on one thing: training to fight and win a war.
And let someone else worry about the plumbing.
You let the support division handle the messy business of running bases, fixing trucks, and managing supply lines from the factory to the foxhole. It clears the mental bandwidth for the warfighters.
It sounds efficient on paper. It makes a lot of sense. But let's talk about the hardware that's going to fill these divisions. Because you can have the best organizational chart in the world, but if you don't have the metal, it doesn't matter. Let's talk tanks.
The big metal, yes. This is a fascinating part of the story because it involves a major geographical shift that is causing quite a stir within the Army.
Right. We're talking about the Leopard 2 main battle tank. The sources say we have a fleet of 103 vehicles. That includes the older 2A4s, the upgraded 2A4Ms, and the top-tier 2A6Ms. A mixed bag.
Very mixed bag. Plus the engineering variants, the recovery vehicles. But the big news is that they aren't going to be spread out across the country anymore.
No, they are being centralized at Garrison Edmonton. All of them.
Every single one.
Why Edmonton? I mean, I know the terrain out there. Wainwright is the big training area. But why move every single tank to the west? Why not keep some in the east for the units there?
It's about the ebb and flow of maintenance. And you have to understand, a main battle tank is a maintenance nightmare. It's a 60-ton machine full of hydraulics, electronics, and heavy machinery that is constantly trying to break itself.
It's not a Toyota Camry.
It is the furthest thing from a Camry. At any given time, a significant percentage of your fleet is broken. That's just the reality.
Okay, so how does centralizing them help that?
Well, think about the old model. If you have 10 tanks in Quebec, 10 in Ontario, and 20 in Alberta, and let's say a third of them are broken at any given time.
You've got little pockets of 6 or 7 working tanks.
Exactly. You end up with pockets of 3 or 4 or maybe 6 or 7 working tanks. You can't train effectively with 6 tanks. You can't simulate a squadron attack, let alone a regimental one. But if you put them all in one place, you create a critical mass.
So even if 30% are in the shop,
you still have 70 tanks ready to roll out to the training area. You can execute division-level maneuvers. You can have multiple squadrons training at the same time. It concentrates your combat power.
And the sources mention a regional maintenance center being set up out there. This isn't just about moving the tanks, it's about moving the mechanics, too.
A huge part of it. This is a public-private partnership with KNDS Deutschland, who used to be Krauss-Maffei-Wegmann, the people who actually design and build the Leopard.
So you have the original manufacturer on site.
They are setting up a center of excellence in Edmonton. The idea is to have the factory experts, the engineers, the specialized tools right there next to the tanks to keep the fleet availability as high as possible. It cuts the supply chain for critical parts from weeks to hours.
But there's a trade-off here, a human trade-off. The sources are pretty clear that units in the East Historic Regiments, like the Royal Canadian Dragoons in Petawawa or the 12th Regiment Blondet in Quebec, are losing their permanent tank complements.
That is the bitter pill, and it's a very controversial move. If you are a tanker in Petawawa, you don't have a tank in your backyard anymore.
So what do you do?
Your regiment is still an armored regiment, but you'll be training on simulators or lighter vehicles day to day. To do your real job, to smell the diesel and feel the recoil, you have to rotate out to Edmonton or Wainwright.
So it creates a fly-in, fly-out army for tankers.
To an extent, yes. It's a model that saves money and increases fleet availability, but it puts a real strain on the personnel who have to travel constantly to stay qualified. There's a real fear it could erode the culture of those units.
The Army's counter-argument, I assume, is that the big exercises happen at Wainwright anyway.
That's the argument, that this minimizes disruption because the major maneuvers were already happening there. But it's one thing to go for a month-long exercise. It's another to have your core equipment based halfway across the country.
Speaking of working tanks, the Leopard 2 is a great machine, but it's not exactly brand new. Some of these hulls have been around for a while. They're Cold War vintage.
They are aging. And the Army knows this. They have a strategy they're calling the bridge.
The bridge.
The plan is to keep the Leopard 2 viable until 2035. After that, they are looking at procuring a completely new main battle tank, an MBT, for the 2040s. But to get to 2035, that's a nearly 10-year gap. They have to do some pretty significant upgrades.
This is the HDFM heavy direct fire modernization.
Right. There is a $76 million project underway right now with FFG Canada to convert the Leopard 2A6Ms to a C2 standard.
C2, what's that?
Command and control. It's basically a digital brain transplant for the tank.
Okay.
They are ripping out the old analog systems, the radios that hiss and crackle, the old thermal sights, and putting in digital backbones. This allows the tank to talk to drones, talk to satellites, and plug into the new digital command networks that the maneuver division is built around.
So it turns the tank from an island into a node in the network.
That's the perfect way to put it. It can share data, see what a friendly drone sees, and get targeting information from headquarters in real time.
But the sources also hint that this might not be enough. There is a debate about how much money to dump into an old tank. It's like putting a new engine in a classic car. The chassis is still old.
That's the friction point, a big one. To fully future-proof the fleet past 2035 would cost over $620 million.
Wow.
You'd need active protection systems like the Israeli Iron Fist or Trophy systems that can shoot down incoming missiles and rockets.
Which we're seeing is essential in Ukraine.
Absolutely essential. You'd need better mine protection underneath. The current plan is a bit of a stopgap. They are doing the digital upgrade to keep them relevant on the network, but the government is very hesitant to spend the full $500 million if they're just going to buy a new tank in 10 years.
So we might end up with a tank that can talk to the network, but is still physically vulnerable to modern anti-tank missiles.
It's a real possibility.
That's a scary thought for the crews inside. We can hear you perfectly, but we can't stop the missile.
It is. It's a huge concern. And that leads us to the next big project, which is arguably even more urgent for the new strategy, the gap in the lineup, the MedCav.
Medium cavalry. I love the name. It sounds like something from the 1800s, but the tech is very 2026. Explain the gap. We have the LAVs, the light armored vehicles. They've been the workhorse for decades. Why do we need something else?
The LAV is a wheeled vehicle. At its heart, it's an 8-wheeled armored truck. A very good one, but still a truck.
And it was great in places like Afghanistan.
It was fantastic on roads and hard-packed desert, but wheels have a major physics problem in the Canadian North. And that problem can be summed up in one word.
Muskeg.
Muskeg, that spongy peat moss terrain that covers half of Canada, and deep, wet snow. A wheeled vehicle has high ground pressure. All the weight sits on those 8 little contact patches on the tires.
Oh, 'cause it sinks.
It sinks. If you drive a LAV into the Muskeg in summer, you don't drive it out, you become a pillbox. It's a strategic liability for Arctic operations.
So the Army needs tracks.
They need flotation. That's the technical term. Tracks spread the weight of the vehicle over a massive surface area. A 40-ton tracked vehicle can actually exert less pressure on the ground per square inch than a human foot.
So it floats over the mud?
It floats over the mud, it glides over the snow, it can go places a wheeled vehicle simply cannot. It's a non-negotiable requirement for credible combat power in the Arctic.
So the requirement is for at least 250 tracked armored fighting vehicles. And the timeline in the documents is, it's aggressive. Delivery between 2029 and 2031.
It is lightning fast for Canadian defense procurement.
Usually these things take 15 years of studies and committees.
Exactly. They want them in 3 or 4 years, which means they can't design something new. They have to buy off the shelf. And the specs they're demanding are pretty high end.
Let's talk about those. Survivability is key, I see.
Number 1 on the list, STAN Level 6 protection.
Break that down for us. What does that mean in the real world?
It means the vehicle has to be able to survive being hit by 30mm cannon fire, which is what a lot of Russian fighting vehicles are armed with. It also means significant protection against mines and IEDs.
And firepower.
It has to be modular. They want turrets that can be swapped out with different weapons, 30mm or 50mm cannons, mortars for indirect fire, and launchers for anti-tank guided missiles.
And I saw this fascinating requirement. Non-line of sight fire.
This is a huge lesson from Ukraine. They want launchers for loitering munitions or kamikaze drones with a range of 10 kilometers or more. So the vehicle can be hidden behind a hill and still strike a target it can't see. It's a game changer.
So let's look at the contenders. The sources go into deep detail on the options here. And there seems to be a clear frontrunner.
The BAE Systems CV90. It's the elephant in the room.
Why is it the favorite? Is it just because everyone else has it? It's a popular vehicle in Europe?
Part of it is popularity, yes. That means interoperability. It's used by 10 European nations, Denmark, the Netherlands, Sweden, Norway. But the main reason, the overwhelming reason, is battle provenance.
It's been tested.
The sources highlight that the CV90 is currently fighting in Ukraine. It's taking hits from RPGs, it's engaging Russian armor, and critically, the crews are surviving. There are multiple reports coming out of Ukraine of CV90s being battle damaged but crew safe.
That's a powerful metric. That's more than a marketing slogan.
It's everything. In the modern recruitment environment, you can't treat soldiers like ammunition. You have to treat them like gold. Telling a recruit and their family, this vehicle is proven to keep you alive against a T-90 tank, is a massive, massive selling point.
And the specs on the Mark IV version are pretty wild. I was reading about the suspension system. It's not what you'd expect.
It's incredible engineering. It uses active damping technology, and this is actually derived from Formula One racing.
Formula One tech in a tank? How does that even work?
The vehicle has sensors that read the terrain just ahead of the tracks, hundreds of times a second. The computer then adjusts the stiffness of the suspension cylinders in milliseconds to counteract the bump before the chassis even feels it.
So it's like noise-canceling headphones, but for bumps on the ground.
That is the perfect analogy. What this means practically is that while a normal Tang has to slow down to 15 or 20 kilometers over rough ground to keep the crew from getting concussed.
Right, so they can actually aim the gun.
Exactly. The CB90 can glide over that same terrain at 60 or 70 kilometers. It gives it incredible tactical speed, and on a battlefield, speed is survival. It also means you can fire your weapons accurately while moving at high speed.
Plus, it has that eye-fighting augmented reality system for the crew.
Which is another leap forward. It fuses all the sensor data, the thermal sights, the commander's 360-degree cameras, the data from drones into a single picture for the commander. It can even use AI to prioritize threats automatically.
So it'll highlight the biggest threat in red on your helmet display.
Exactly. It's like playing a video game, but the consequences are very real. It reduces the commander's cognitive load so they can make faster, better decisions.
Are there other options? Or is the CV90 a done deal?
It's not done until the contract is signed. The Hanwha Redback from South Korea is a very strong contender. It's brand new, very high-tech, and it aligns with Canada's pivot to the Indo-Pacific strategy. Buying from Korea is a strategic move in itself.
And what about Rheinmetall?
The Rheinmetall links. Rheinmetall has a massive industrial presence in Quebec, specifically in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu. Politically, buying a vehicle that creates and sustains hundreds of jobs in Quebec is always an attractive option for any government in Ottawa.
But the CV90's interoperability with our NATO allies in the Arctic, like Denmark and Norway, seems hard to beat.
It is. It's a huge plus. If we buy the CV90, we can share parts with the Danes in the Arctic. We can share ammo with the Dutch in Europe. We aren't an orphan fleet. And that has massive logistical and financial benefits down the line.
So we have the heavy tanks, we have the medium cavalry, but what about just moving people and supplies? In the Arctic, if you don't have a road, you are stuck. And the sources mention a project called DAM.
Domestic Arctic Mobility Enhancement. This is the unglamorous but absolutely vital workhorse of the North.
And this is about replacing the BV-206. For the listeners who haven't seen one, describe this thing. It's unique.
It's affectionately known as the Haglunds. It looks like two shoeboxes on tracks connected by a hydraulic hitch in the middle. It's been in service for decades. It's weird looking, it's slow, but it goes where absolutely nothing else can go.
Wiggle wagon.
Yes, the wiggle wagon. The DAME project is a big one, worth between $500 million and $1 billion to buy about 100 new vehicles to replace them.
And they're sticking with that articulated two-car design.
Absolutely. The physics of it are just unbeaten for that kind of terrain. Because the two cars are linked by a powered hinge, they can push and pull each other. If the front car breaks through the ice, the back car can act as an anchor and pull it out.
And vice versa.
If the back car gets stuck in a ditch, the front car pulls. It can climb vertical snowbanks. It is fully amphibious. It can swim across rivers and lakes. It's the ultimate all-terrain vehicle.
And the contenders here are the BAE Beowulf versus the ST Kinetics Bronco 3.
Both are basically modern, armored, high-tech versions of the old wiggle wagon. More power, better protection, more payload.
And the strategic importance here can't be overstated, right? These aren't just for fighting.
No, these are the vehicles that will actually be used for disaster response 90% of the time. When a community in the north is snowed in, power lines are down, and the roads are gone, you aren't sending a Leopard 2 tank. You're sending a Beowulf to bring in supplies. You're sending a Bronco ambulance to evacuate people. These are the lifesavers.
Okay, so we have the plan, we have the divisions, we have the shopping list. It's ambitious. But now we have to talk about the machinery that buys all this stuff. Because Canada, well, let's be honest, we don't have the best track record when it comes to buying military gear quickly.
That is putting it very, very mildly. Our procurement cycle is legendary for being slow, litigious, and bureaucratic. It's often called the Valley of Death, where good projects go to die.
And that is why the creation of the Defense Investment Agency, the DIA, is such a big deal.
It's an attempt to fix a system that everyone agrees is broken.
This was created in October 2025 by Prime Minister Mark Carney, CEO Doug Guzman, a big name from the financial world. What is the mandate here? How is this different from the 10 other committees that used to do this?
The mandate is to cut the red tape.
Yeah.
To kill the bureaucracy. The DIA is designed to centralize expertise for any project over $100 million.
So all the big ones.
All the big ones. In the past, you had the military guys in one department defining what they wanted, the public works guys in another department managing the contract, and the industry guys in a third department managing the industrial benefits.
They were in different buildings, different departments, speaking different languages.
Completely. And they often had competing priorities. The DIA brings the financial experts, the military experts, and the industrial experts into one room under one CEO with one mandate. Get the gear to the troops on time and on budget.
And the sources have some interesting math on the Buy Canadian aspect of this.
The economic multipliers. This is how they sell the massive spending to the taxpayer. The experts at the DIA argue that for every dollar the government spends on domestic defense manufacturing, it generates about $2.30 in GDP output.
So it's an industrial stimulus program wrapped in a defense policy. It's not just about security, it's about jobs.
Exactly. By building these things in Canada, or at least having Canadian companies do the integration and the long-term maintenance, like with the tanks in Edmonton, you are supercharging the advanced manufacturing sector. You're creating high-tech jobs that stay in Canada.
But there is a friction point here. We have a source document, the annual report to Parliament on access to information, that paints a pretty grim picture of transparency within the Department of National Defense itself.
It's a major reality check. While the DIA is being set up to speed things up and be more efficient, the department it has to work with seems to be closing up.
The stats are pretty bad.
They're awful. In the 2024-25 fiscal year, D&D only answered 43.9% of access to information requests on time.
43.9%. That is down 13% from the previous year, which wasn't great to begin with.
Well, in school, that's a fail. A hard fail.
And it's not just a little bit late.
No. There were over 1,200 requests closed so late they fell into what's called deemed refusal. That basically means the department just ghosted the requester. They didn't even bother to formally ask for an extension.
Why does this matter for tanks and modernization? Who cares if a journalist or a historian gets their file late?
Because transparency is the lubricant of industry and oversight. Defense contractors, journalists, academics, and opposition parties use these requests to figure out what is happening. Is the project on time? Is it over budget? What are the real requirements?
So if you're a company trying to bid on the Medcav-V project, you need that information.
You need it. When the department goes dark, it creates friction. Industry partners can't get answers. It breeds suspicion. It suggests a system that is completely overwhelmed by its own workload.
What reason do they give?
The official reasons cited are interference with operations and workload, which basically translates to, we're too busy and we don't want to tell you. It points to a transparency crisis right at the moment they're trying to spend billions and billions of dollars.
It's the fog of war, but in the procurement office in Ottawa.
Exactly. And if you combine that administrative fog with the personnel challenges we talked about, the churn of moving people to new divisions, retraining them on complex digital systems, moving tank crews to Edmonton, you have a system that is under immense stress.
So the risk is you buy all the tanks you want, but if your people are burnt out and your bureaucracy is gridlocked, the tanks don't move.
That's the nightmare scenario. You have $1 billion of brand new hardware sitting in a parking lot because the paperwork isn't done or the crews aren't trained.
Let's zoom out a bit. We've talked about the Canadian context, but none of this is happening in a vacuum. The sources keep referencing Ukraine. We touched on it with the CV90, but how else is that conflict shaping this transformation?
It's the ultimate feedback loop. The war in Ukraine has, for one thing, ended the debate about whether tanks are obsolete. For a while, people thought drones and cheap missiles had killed the main battle tank.
Right, the tank was a dinosaur.
They were wrong. But the war proved that you need very high survivability. The success of the CV90 in surviving RPG hits is directly driving the Canadian requirement for STANAG Level 6 protection. The Army is not willing to send soldiers out in thin-skinned vehicles anymore. The risk tolerance has plummeted.
And drones. We mentioned the new drone unit.
It's more than that. It's a cultural shift called the Minerva Initiative. The Army realizes that in Ukraine, every squad has a drone. It's not just a special asset for the commander anymore.
It's like having binoculars or a radio.
It's exactly like that. The goal is to get drones into the hands of every soldier, from the convoy driver checking for ambushes to the medic looking for casualties. They need to normalize the use of unmanned systems because the enemy is certainly using them. If you can't fly a drone, you are illiterate on the modern battlefield.
We also need to talk about NATO. This whole pivot is happening in that context. Canada has been under pressure for years to meet that 2% of GDP spending target.
And according to the 2025 budget documents, we finally hit it in 2026. Finally. And the document even tables a target of 5% by the mid-2030s, that's a wartime level of spending.
But the key here isn't just the money, right? It's interoperability. It's being able to work with our allies.
It's everything. We talked about the Leopard user group. If Canada goes off and buys some weird, unique tank that nobody else uses, even if it's the best tank in the world, we create a logistical nightmare for ourselves.
The orphan fleet.
An orphan fleet is expensive to fix and almost impossible to deploy effectively in a coalition. If we are in Latvia with our NATO allies and our tank brakes, we want to be able to borrow a spare part from the Germans or the Poles.
Which is why the Leopard 2 path and the CV90 path are so heavily favored.
It keeps us in the club. It keeps us standardized. It's not just about the hardware. It's about the ecosystem.
So let's wrap this up. We are looking at a massive gamble. We are betting the farm on a return to hard power. We're moving tanks across the country, building new divisions from scratch, and spending billions on new metal we haven't even bought yet.
It's a gamble, a necessary one, the government would argue, but it requires what the Army itself calls strategic patience.
Strategic patience.
We are in a transition period, the old gear is wearing out, the new gear, the Medcav-Vs, the new tanks won't fully be here and operational until 2029 or 2031 at the earliest. We are currently in the gap.
And that leads to the final provocative thought for our listeners. We are building a force for 2040. We are designing divisions to fight a high-tech war in the future. But the world is volatile now.
Yes, it is.
We have transparency issues creating friction with industry. We have a massive organizational shuffle happening that is stressing out personnel. We have units rotating across the country just to find a tank to train on.
The question is the Canadian Army more vulnerable today, right in the middle of this transition, than it was before it started?
You can't fight a war with a reorganization plan.
You can't. You have to fight with what you have on the day. And for the next few years, what we have is a construction site.
A construction site is a dangerous place to be when the storm hits. It's going to be a fascinating few years to watch this inflection point play out. That's all for this deep dive. Stay safe, stay informed, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.